The blade cut through atmosphere that screamed, and Commander Sarah Chen didn't flinch. The Phyrexian champion's chitinous armor sparked against the energy shield 6 inches from her throat. Blood ran hot down her temple where his opening strike had grazed her. The arena floor, carved from volcanic glass and marked with the death sigils of fragments, reflected her face in fragments. She saw her own eyes cold as vacuum. "Human bleeds easy," the champion hissed through mandibles that clicked like rifle mechanisms. His name was Thrakos, and he'd killed 17 challengers in ritual combat. His carapace bore their marks like medals. Sarah shifted her weight, and the movement carried the economy of someone who'd trained in shipboard quarters where wasted motion meant broken bones. "Haven't started bleeding yet." The Phyrexian queen watched from her obsidian throne, 6 arms folded in a configuration Sarah's briefing had labeled judicial observation. The queen's chitin was pure black, decorated with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with her heartbeat. Beside her, in a restraint cage barely large enough for standing, was the reason Sarah had entered this arena, 10-year-old Marcus Webb. Human. Crying. Terrified. The boy had wandered during the diplomatic tour, touched something sacred. The Phyrexians demanded satisfaction through their oldest law, trial by combat. Diplomatic immunity meant nothing here. The Phyrexian Empire spanned 40 star systems, and Earth needed their alliance against the Corvith threat. The ambassador had explained it with the hollow voice of someone sending a child to die. Sarah had volunteered before the sentence finished. Thrakos circled, his forelegs moving in a pattern that had evolved for ambush predation on a world where everything hunted everything. His secondary arms flexed, revealing blade spurs that wept with paralytic venom. The primary arms held a weapon that resembled a halberd designed by someone who understood momentum and leverage better than mercy. "You dishonor the queen by sending a soldier instead of the offender," Thrakos said. The arena's translation field carried his words with disturbing clarity. "The child should face consequences." "The child," Sarah said, "is a child. Phyrexian children face their mistakes. Human children get protected." The attack came faster than Earth-evolved reflexes should have tracked, but Sarah had spent 2 years in combat against the Corvath, whose reaction times made Phyrexians look sedentary. She dropped beneath the halberd's arc, rolled across glass that bit through her combat suit, came up inside his guard. Her vibroknife found the joint between thorax and abdomen, slid through chitin like it was designed for exactly this purpose. Because it was. Because humanity studied everything that might kill it and built tools accordingly. Thrakos screamed, a sound like tearing metal. His secondary arms whipped around, spurs seeking her eyes. Sarah took one in the shoulder, felt the venom hit her bloodstream like ice water. Her combat suite injected counteragents immediately, broad-spectrum neutralizers that wouldn't stop everything but might buy her minutes. She needed seconds. The knife twisted. Thrakos staggered. His biology kept him upright because Phyrexians didn't fall easily, but Sarah saw the calculation change in his compound eyes. He'd expected a quick kill, expected human weakness. He'd studied the wrong wars. Sarah had been at Nova Station when the Corvath breached the hull. She'd held pressure on a wounded pilot's throat for 40 minutes while reactor radiation cooked them both. She'd learned that survival wasn't about being strong or fast or even skilled. Survival was about deciding what you were willing to endure and then enduring past that. Thrakos' halberd came down in a strike meant to split her spine. Sarah didn't dodge. She stepped into it, caught the haft on her armored forearm, felt the bone crack underneath. The pain arrived like an old friend. She used it. Her good hand drove the knife up, through the weak point under his primary thorax, angled toward where xenobiology suggested his primary neural cluster resided. Thrakos convulsed. His mandibles opened wide enough to bite through her helmet, and Sarah saw his venom glands contract. Then a voice cut through the arena, high and breaking with terror and something else. "Stop! Please stop." Marcus, the boy had grabbed the restraint cage bars, was shaking them with everything his small hands could manage. Tears ran down his face, but his voice carried across the arena with the particular clarity of children who haven't learned that screaming sometimes doesn't help. "She's hurting him. Make her stop. She's a sadist." Sadist. 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 Sarah's knife stopped moving. Not because the word mattered. Because something had changed in the arena's atmosphere, in the quality of silence from the throne. The Phyrexian queen had raised one arm, a gesture Sarah's briefing hadn't covered. Thrakos collapsed, not from Sarah's blade, but from something else. Submission. Ancient instinct overriding warrior pride. The queen spoke, and the translation field rendered her voice with unexpected gentleness. The child speaks truth? Sarah pulled her knife free, stepped back, kept her eyes on Thrakos because wounded things were dangerous things. Her broken arm hung useless. The venom made her extremities numb. She could feel her combat suit working overtime to keep her standing. Your Majesty, Sarah said, and the protocol words tasted like ash. I don't understand the question. The child says you cause pain for pleasure. The queen's bioluminescence shifted to a pattern Sarah didn't recognize. The child says you are sadist. This is true? She's hurting him and smiling. I saw her smile. Sarah's face was locked in what combat psychologists called a stress response grimace. The expression that happened when pain and adrenaline and focus compressed everything human into something that looked like emotion but wasn't. It probably looked like smiling. No, Sarah said. I'm ending a fight by causing maximum suffering, by surviving. The queen's patterns shifted again, and this time Sarah recognized it from the briefing.
Amputation.
Judicial reevaluation. Explain the difference, human. My champion bleeds.
You smile.
The child sees cruelty. Sarah looked at Marcus, then at Thrakos, then at her own knife, still wet with alien blood. The arena waited. The alliance hung on her next words. She thought about Nova Station, about holding pressure on a wound while radiation poisoned them both, about the pilot asking her why she wasn't screaming. Because, Sarah said, screaming doesn't stop the bleeding. The queen descended from her throne, and the arena rippled with collective shock. Vrexian nobility didn't approach combat floors during active duels. The protocols were ancient, written in exoskeleton and instinct, but the queen moved with the deliberate grace of someone who made protocols rather than followed them. She stopped 3 meters from Sarah, close enough that her bioluminescence cast patterns across Sarah's blood-stained armor. Each pulse seemed synchronized with Sarah's heartbeat, though Sarah knew that was impossible. Vrexian biological sensing had limits. You are injured, the queen observed. Yes. My champion's venom courses through your system. Yes. Your arm is broken in 2 places. 3, Sarah corrected, because accuracy mattered even when everything hurt. Pain could make you sloppy, and sloppy got you killed. The queen's mandibles moved in what Sarah's briefing had labeled thoughtful consideration. You still hold the blade ready. Sarah glanced down. Her good hand still gripped the vibro knife, still held it at guard position. She hadn't even realized. Muscle memory ran deeper than conscious thought. Training, Sarah said. Or instinct. The queen tilted her head, compound eyes reflecting Sarah's image 1,000 times over. The child believes you enjoy this. Marcus's voice came again, smaller now, uncertain. She was smiling. I saw her. The queen didn't look away from Sarah. Were you? It's not emotion. It's biology. Explain. Sarah's combat suit beeped, warning her that the counteragents were losing their battle with Thrakos' venom. She had maybe 10 minutes before her nervous system started shutting down. Maybe less. The suit would keep her heart beating, but consciousness was negotiable. Humans smile when we're stressed sometimes, Sarah said. It's a malfunction. A crossed wire. We also laugh at funerals and cry when we're happy. Our faces lie. The queen's bioluminescence shifted to deep purple, a color Sarah hadn't seen before. This is common among your species? Common enough that we teach soldiers to recognize it, to not trust facial expressions in combat, to trust actions instead. Actions. The queen's gaze moved to Thrakos, who knelt on the arena floor, mandibles still twitching from the neural trauma of Sarah's strike. You struck to disable, not to kill. It wasn't a question, but Sarah answered anyway. Yes. Why? Because the law required combat to satisfaction, not death. Because killing when you don't have to is waste. Because... Sarah's voice caught, and she hated herself for it. Because that boy is watching, and I wanted him to see that violence has limits. Marcus made a sound like he'd been struck. The queen finally turned to look at the child in his cage. You condemned her as sadist. You see her differently now? The boy's face was a mess of tears and confusion. I don't understand. She was hurting him. She looked happy about it. She looked focused, the queen corrected. There is difference. How can you tell? Vryxian laughter. Not mocking. Appreciative. Because I have seen sadists young human. I have executed them. They do not stop when victory is achieved. They do not choose mercy when death is available. They do not break their own bones to protect children who call them monsters. Sarah blinked. I didn't. Your arm broke when you caught my champion's strike. You knew it would. You chose that pain instead of evasion because evasion would have extended the fight. Extended his suffering and risk. The queen's bioluminescence flickered. This is not sadism. This is something else. Efficiency, Sarah offered. Compassion, the queen countered. The word hung in the arena like a challenge. Sarah wanted to argue, to explain that compassion was soft, and she was anything but soft. But her combat suit was beeping more insistently now, and the floor had developed a disturbing tendency to tilt. I need to sit down, Sarah admitted. You need medical attention. The queen made a gesture, and Vryxian attendants emerged from the arena walls carrying equipment that looked both medical and ritualistic. But first, you need to understand why the duel is ended. The boy called me a sadist. You investigated. I'm cleared? Sarah hated how her words slurred slightly. The venom was winning. No, the boy called you a sadist, and I stopped the duel because he cared enough to speak. I don't follow. The child you protect called you a monster to save my champion. He showed mercy to his enemy. This is the quality we test for in trial by combat. Not strength, not cruelty, the capacity for mercy under pressure. The queen's mandibles spread wide, fully extended. He passed. You passed. The duel is satisfied. I didn't mean to pass anything. I just didn't want anyone else to get hurt. Exactly. The queen turned to her attendants. Release the child. Treat the human. Tend to Thrakos with honor. He served well. The Vryxian champion managed to raise his head, compound eyes focusing on Sarah with what she interpreted as respect. You fight like Korvath. All efficiency, no waste. I fight like someone who's fought Korvath, Sarah corrected. There's a difference. Teach me the difference. The attendants caught her before she hit the volcanic glass, their many limbs surprisingly gentle. If I survive the next 10 minutes, sure. You will survive. The queen's certainty carried the weight of someone who didn't make predictions, only decisions. My physicians are excellent, and you have given me much to consider about humanity. Like what? Sarah asked, because consciousness was fading and she wanted to know what her near death had accomplished beyond saving one terrified child. Like how your species defines strength. Like how you carry violence without letting it carry you. Like how a soldier can break her own bones to spare an enemy unnecessary pain and call it efficiency rather than what it truly is. Which is, that combat can have honor, that even in war some things remain sacred. Sarah wanted to argue that she wasn't hopeful, that she was just trained, that everything she'd done was protocol and conditioning and survival instinct compressed into lethal efficiency. But the venom pulled her down into darkness, and the last thing she heard was Marcus crying. Not in fear anymore. In relief, Sarah woke to the smell of antiseptic and something floral she couldn't identify. Her arm was encased in what looked like crystal but felt warm and slightly mobile. The Vryxian medical wing differed from human facilities in ways that made her spatial reasoning ache, all curves and organic shapes where she expected right angles. Marcus sat in a chair designed for Vryxian anatomy, looking small and uncomfortable and awake. When he saw her eyes open, he flinched. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call you that. I didn't understand what was happening. I thought you were hurting him for fun. I didn't know about combat phases. I didn't know about... His voice broke. You almost died because of me twice. Water? Marcus grabbed a container, fumbled with the Vryxian design, finally got it to her lips. The water tasted wrong but wet. She drank enough to speak clearly. You saved my life, Sarah said. I almost got you killed. You stopped the fight. The queen said the duel was satisfied because you showed mercy. If you hadn't spoken, I would have kept fighting. Thrakos would have kept fighting. One of us would be dead. Sarah shifted, felt her broken arm protest inside its crystal cast. You didn't almost get me killed twice. You stopped me from dying once. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand.
But I called you a sadist?
You called what you saw. That's honest. Honest is good, even when I'm wrong. Especially then. Being wrong with good intentions is how humans learn. Being wrong with bad intentions is how we become the things we're afraid of. Sarah tried to sit up, decided that was ambitious, Stayed horizontal. Did they explain why you're here? The real reason? The queen said I touched a memorial, a stone that honors their dead from some ancient war. She said touching it without permission was like spitting on a grave. That's about right. It just looked pretty. It was glowing. I know. But they wanted to kill me for it. Sarah let silence sit for a moment, gathering words carefully. They wanted consequences, not the same thing. Their culture treats sacred spaces differently than ours. They don't forgive accidents around death monuments because intent doesn't matter to the dead. Only action matters. Only respect shown or not shown. That's not fair. Fair is a human concept. It doesn't translate well. Sarah finally managed to lever herself up slightly, enough to see Marcus clearly, but justice translates. And their justice includes trial by combat, which includes the possibility of mercy. You triggered that possibility by calling you a sadist, by caring about suffering even when the suffering belonged to someone who wanted you dead, by placing mercy above revenge. That's what their combat trials actually test for, not strength. Character under pressure. You passed. Marcus looked at his hands. I failed. I got you hurt. You spoke truth as you saw it, which took courage. You tried to stop violence, which took compassion. You protected an enemy, which took growth. Sarah's vision swam slightly, venom after effects or pain medication, or both. Most adults can't do one of those things under pressure. You didn't fail anything. A Vrexian physician entered, mandibles clicking in what Sarah had learned meant professional assessment. She examined Sarah's readings on a device that looked like living crystal, made adjustments that Sarah felt as warmth spreading through her chest. You heal adequately, the physician said. The venom is neutralized. The bones will regenerate fully within 3 standard cycles.
You will have full function.
Human resilience is impressive. The physician turned to Marcus. The queen requests your presence. Both of you and the human can walk. I can walk now, Sarah lied. In 1 hour you can walk, the physician corrected. Now you can fall impressively and damage my work. Wait. Sarah waited. Marcus sat with her in silence that gradually became comfortable. After a while he spoke again. What did it feel like? Fighting him? Sarah considered lying, decided he deserved truth. Terrifying. Every second I knew he was faster, stronger, had better weapons. Every second I knew one mistake would kill me. Every second I had to choose where to hurt him because there wasn't time or strength to hurt him everywhere. So I picked the places that would stop him fastest with the least permanent damage. That doesn't sound like fighting. That sounds like surgery. Violence is surgery when you do it right. Cut exactly what needs cutting. Stop when the patient stabilizes. Don't remove anything that doesn't need removing. Sarah touched her crystal-encased arm gently. I learned that, fighting Korvath. They're even faster than Vrexians, even stronger. The only way humans survived was by being precise, by making every motion count, by choosing violence the way a surgeon chooses incisions. But you smiled. I was focused. There's a difference, but you can't see it from outside. Sarah met his eyes. You know what you can see from outside? My choices. And I chose to spare him when I could have killed him. That's the truth that matters. Marcus nodded slowly. She said actions speak louder than faces. The queen is smart. She's scary. Smart people often are, especially when they have power. Sarah tested her legs, found them functional if unsteady. I think I can walk now. Help me up. Marcus scrambled to assist, his small hands surprisingly strong on her good arm. Together they managed to get Sarah vertical and moving toward the door, where 2 Vrexian guards waited with the patient posture of people who'd wait forever if necessary. One more thing, Marcus said as they walked. When I called you a sadist and you stopped fighting, were you scared? Yes. Of what? Sarah thought about it, about that moment when the queen's arm raised and everything hung in balance. Of you believing it. Of you thinking that violence always comes with a smile. Of you learning the wrong lesson from watching me fight. What's the right lesson? That violence is a tool, sometimes necessary, never enjoyable. And if you ever find yourself enjoying it, you stop being a soldier and start being the enemy. They reached the queen's audience chamber where bioluminescence painted the walls in colors that meant ceremony and judgment, and if Sarah read it correctly, respect. The queen waited on her throne, 6 arms arranged in a configuration that suggested formal welcome. Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand once before releasing it. Together, they entered to face whatever came next. The Queen's audience chamber smelled like ozone and something organic Sarah's earth-trained nose couldn't classify. The walls pulsed with bioluminescence that seemed to breathe, shifting through colors that Sarah's briefing had covered only superficially. Purple for contemplation, gold for respect, deep blue for something the translation matrix rendered as binding judgment. Sarah's legs barely held her weight, but she stood at attention anyway. Marcus tried to copy her posture, his small frame rigid with effort. The Phyrexian guards flanked them at a respectful distance, their own bioluminescence muted to neutral gray. "You both stand when sitting is available," the Queen observed. "This is pride or pain?" "Respect, Your Majesty," Sarah said. "In human culture, we stand for important moments. And this moment is important? You requested our presence. That makes it important." The Queen's mandibles clicked, that appreciative sound again. "Your species understands hierarchy while questioning it constantly. This seems contradictory." "It's adaptive, Your Majesty. We respect authority while reserving the right to challenge it when necessary. Keeps both rulers and ruled honest." Dangerous philosophy. "We've tried the alternatives. They end poorly." The Queen's bioluminescence shifted slightly, introducing threads of purple through the blue. "You speak with unusual candor for someone who just survived trial by combat. Lying now would dishonor your champion's effort and your physician's work." "Indeed." The Queen's gaze moved to Marcus. "And you, child, you understand why you were brought before me?" Marcus's voice wavered but held. "I touched something sacred without permission. I disrespected your dead. I'm sorry. I didn't know, but that doesn't make it okay." "You understand correctly." The Queen descended from her throne again, moving with that same deliberate grace. "And yet you called for mercy during combat. For my champion, the same culture whose laws condemned you. He was hurt. That's all that mattered. Not that you might be freed if he died?" Marcus looked confused. "Why would I want him to die?" The Queen stopped directly in front of the boy, close enough that her breath moved his hair. Sarah's muscles tensed, ready to move despite the venom after effects and broken bones, but the Queen's posture showed no aggression. "Because humans are tribal," the Queen said. "Because children especially divide the world into us and them. Because your life hung on that combat outcome, and mercy for enemies is rare even among adults. He wasn't my enemy, he was just doing his job. His job was to kill you or your champion. That's different." The Queen's bioluminescence blazed gold so bright it cast shadows. "You are 10 years old." "Yes, Your Majesty. And you understand the difference between following orders and choosing cruelty? My mom's a judge. I've sat in her courtroom. I've seen people get sentenced to things they deserve and things that just follow rules. It's not always the same thing." Sarah's chest tightened with something she didn't want to name. Pride, maybe. Or fear that the boy's wisdom would seem like precocity, like coaching, like anything but genuine growth. The Queen studied Marcus for a long moment, then turned to Sarah. "You taught him this?" "No, Your Majesty. I met him 3 days ago when the diplomatic tour started. His understanding is his own." "For a child you barely knew. Explain this choice." Sarah's broken arm throbbed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "He was a child. Someone needed to protect him. I had the training. The math was simple. Thrakos has killed 17 opponents. I studied Korvath combat dynamics for 2 years. Different baseline." Sarah kept her voice level, factual. "I assessed my odds at 30% survival, better than a 10-year-old's odds, which were 0. 30%. The Queen's mandible spread slightly. "You entered lethal combat with expectation of death?" "I entered with expectation of trying. The outcome was negotiable." "This is human optimism or human fatalism?" "Yes." The Queen's laughter filled the chamber, that clicking mandible sound that Sarah was learning to interpret. Not mockery, appreciation for absurdity. "Your species confounds every prediction," the Queen said. "Our xenopsychologists suggested humans would value individual survival above collective responsibility, suggested you would sacrifice the child to preserve diplomatic relations or send warriors to die for political advantage. You did neither. We're not consistent, but we try to be better than our worst instincts. Doesn't always work. Works enough to matter. And this child? He represents your species' better instincts? I'm not representing anything. I'm just me." "You're just you," the Queen agreed. "And you, in being just you, showed more wisdom than my advisors predicted from your species. You acknowledged wrongdoing without deflection. You showed mercy without expectation of reciprocation. You valued life above tactical advantage. She turned back to Sarah. And you demonstrated that human violence can exist within boundaries of honor. This combination is unusual. Sarah's legs were definitely failing now. She locked her knees, forced them to hold. Your Majesty, is there a decision forthcoming? Not to be rude, but I'm going to fall over soon. Sit then. Not until you're seated, Your Majesty. The Queen's bioluminescence flickered with what might have been exasperation or respect. She returned to her throne, arranged herself formally. Sarah immediately collapsed into the nearest chair, which adapted to human anatomy in ways that would have fascinated her if everything didn't hurt. Marcus sat too, looking between Sarah and the Queen like he was watching a tennis match he didn't understand. The decision, the Queen said, is complex. The child violated sacred law. Trial by combat was satisfied, but not through victory. Precedent is unclear. Sarah's heart rate spiked. Your Majesty, however, the Queen continued, precedent exists for mercy when character is demonstrated. You showed such character. The combination suggests that human children are raised with values we respect, even if their implementation is chaotic. We try, Sarah said quietly. You succeed more than you fail, perhaps. The Queen's 6 arms moved through a configuration Sarah's briefing had labeled judicial pronouncement. Therefore, I declare the matter settled. The child demonstrated growth. The champion demonstrated honor. The human warrior demonstrated precision and violence and restraint and victory. All parties satisfied the trial's spiritual requirements. Marcus made a sound like air escaping. I can go home? With conditions. The boy's face fell slightly. What conditions? That you remember this day. That you carry forward the understanding that different cultures hold different things sacred. That you teach other human children to ask before touching, to think before acting, to value mercy even for enemies. The Queen's gaze intensified. Can you meet these conditions? I promise. Then you are free. The diplomatic incident is resolved. The Queen turned to Sarah. And you, Commander Chen, you have given the Phyrexian Empire much to reconsider about humanity. Our alliance grows stronger from this understanding. Sarah tried to stand for the formal response, found her body had other ideas. Your Majesty, I apologize, but I genuinely cannot stand right now. Then remain seated. You have earned rest. The Queen's bioluminescence softened to warm amber. My physicians will ensure full recovery. Miu will remain as my guest until healing is complete. That's very generous, Your Majesty. I wish to learn more about human combat philosophy, about how your species trains violence to serve honor rather than dominate it. Thrakos wishes to learn as well. He wants to train with me. He wants to understand the difference between fighting Korvath and fighting like Korvath. You promised to teach him if you survived. You survived, then regretted it as her ribs protested. I did say that, didn't I? You did. Phyrexians honor all debts, but especially debts spoken in combat. The Queen rose, signaling the audience's end. Rest now. Heal. When you are recovered, we will discuss how the Phyrexian Empire and humanity might learn from each other's approach to violence, honor, and the protection of children who touch things they shouldn't. Marcus stood, bowed awkwardly in a way that made the Phyrexian guard's mandibles click with restrained amusement. Sarah managed a seated bow, which the Queen acknowledged with a formal gesture. As they left the chamber, Marcus whispered, Did we just accidentally improve interstellar relations? I think we did, Sarah whispered back. By me being stupid, and you almost dying? By both of us being human at aliens who expected something else. Sometimes that's enough. The guards escorted them back to the medical wing, where Sarah's bed waited with the same patient inevitability as the guards themselves. She collapsed into it, felt the Phyrexian medical systems adapt around her, monitoring and treating with technology that made human medicine look like bloodletting. Marcus pulled his chair close. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you were fighting, and you knew you might die, what were you thinking about? Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the arena, the volcanic glass, the weight of the blade in her hand. I was thinking that if I died, it should mean something. That the boy watching should see someone fight with purpose, not rage. That even in violence there should be rules we don't break. Like what? Like we don't hurt more than necessary. We don't enjoy what we have to do. We protect the ones who can't protect themselves, even when it costs us everything. Sarah opened her eyes, met his gaze. And we sure as hell don't let children die for mistakes when adults can take that weight instead. Marcus's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you. For the rest of my life, probably. Then do me a favor and make that life worth the 30% chance I gave up. I will, I promise. Sarah believed him, watched him sit back, watched his young face process everything he'd experienced. In a few years, he'd understand it differently. In a few decades, he'd teach it to his own children, maybe. The story would change with each telling, the way all stories did. But the core would remain, a human soldier who chose to break her own bones rather than let a child die, a child who chose mercy for an enemy rather than revenge, an alien queen who recognized honor even when it wore an unfamiliar face. Sarah let her eyes close again, let the Vrexian medicine pull her toward healing sleep. The alliance would hold. The boy would grow. The stories would spread. And somewhere in the space between species, in the gap where misunderstanding bred war and understanding bred peace, one more bridge had been built from violence transformed into something better. It was enough. For now, it was enough. 3 days later, Sarah could walk without assistance and hold a practice blade without dropping it. The Vrexian physicians had done work that bordered on miraculous, regrowing bone and tissue with techniques humanity wouldn't develop for decades. Her arm functioned perfectly, though phantom pain lingered like a memory that hadn't learned to fade. Thrakos waited in a training arena smaller than the combat floor, designed for practice rather than execution. His carapace still bore the scar from Sarah's blade, a silvered line across his thorax that he'd refused to have removed. Honor marks should remain visible, he'd told her through the translation field. They teach lessons to those who see them. Now he stood in a ready stance, holding a practice halberd that looked identical to his combat weapon except for the blunted edges. Sarah held a practice knife, the weight familiar in her hand. You promised to teach the difference, Thrakos said, between fighting Korvath and fighting like Korvath. I did. Sarah moved into her own ready stance, feeling her rebuilt arm protest slightly. The difference is purpose. Korvath fight to destroy. Humans fight to survive. Similar techniques, opposite philosophies. Demonstrate, Sarah moved, not attacking. Just shifting through the defensive patterns she'd learned in 2 years of combat against enemies faster and stronger than she'd ever have right to survive. Each movement was minimal, precise, designed to intercept rather than initiate. Korvath strike to kill, she explained, her body flowing through forms that had saved her life more times than she could count. They overwhelm. They use speed and strength because they have both. Humans can't match that, so we redirect. We use their strength against them. We survive long enough for them to make mistakes. Thrakos watched with the intensity of someone studying scripture. You make defense into offense. We make survival into strategy. It's not about defeating the enemy. It's about not being defeated until the enemy defeats themselves. Show me. They sparred. Slowly at first, then faster as Thrakos began to understand the principle. Each time he struck with overwhelming force, Sarah wasn't there. Each time he tried to use his superior reach, she'd already moved inside it. Each time he adapted, she'd adapted first. After an hour, both were breathing hard. Thrakos lowered his halberd. This is not how I was taught to fight. This is how prey fights predators. How the weak fight the strong. How humans fight the universe. Sarah lowered her own blade. We're not apex predators. We're endurance hunters who learn to use tools. Everything about human combat philosophy comes from that. We don't try to be stronger. We try to last longer. And if lasting longer is not enough, then we make it enough. We adapt faster than circumstances change. We find leverage where none should exist. We turn disadvantages into weapons. Sarah gestured at her rebuilt arm. Your venom should have killed me. Instead, it taught my physicians how to develop better counteragents. Your champion strength should have overwhelmed me. Instead, it taught me where Vrexian biology is vulnerable. Every defeat teaches humans how to win next time. Thrakos' mandibles clicked thoughtfully. This is why you are dangerous. Not because you are strong, because you learn. We're curious and stubborn in equal measure. It's gotten us into trouble since we climbed down from trees. Sarah set her practice blade aside, feeling the weight of exhaustion catch up. But it's also gotten us to the stars. Seize your species' potential. And what do you see? Thrakos was quiet for a moment, his compound eyes reflecting the arena lights in fractal patterns. I see a species that breaks its own bones to protect children, that chooses mercy when violence is easier, That transforms weakness into strength through nothing but will and creativity. He touched the scar on his thorax. I see a species that will either save the galaxy or doom it, depending on which of your instincts proves stronger. That's fair, Sarah admitted. We don't know either. Your species needs guidance from older civilizations, and older civilizations need your perspective on survival. Together, perhaps we become something neither could achieve alone. Sarah thought about Marcus, probably on a transport home by now, carrying lessons about mercy and consequence and the gap between intention and impact. She thought about the arena, about the moment when everything hung on a child's compassion and a queen's wisdom. She thought about humanity spreading through the stars, bringing both its violence and its hope. Maybe, she said, or maybe we just muddle through and hope the good outweighs the bad. That is also very human. That is also very human. They walked together from the training arena, warrior and champion, enemy and teacher, strangers becoming something close to friends through the universal language of shared combat and mutual respect. The Vrexian queen had been right. The alliance was stronger now. Built not on diplomatic treaties or strategic necessity, but on the understanding that came from seeing each other at worst and choosing to recognize the best anyway. Sarah's communicator chimed. A message from Marcus sent from the transport before it jumped to FTL. Made it to the ship safe. Mom says thank you, too. Says she'll try to teach other judges about the difference between justice and rules. I told her you'd like that. See you back on Earth. Don't get stabbed by any more aliens. Sarah smiled. A real smile this time, not the combat grimace that had caused so much trouble. She sent a reply. No promises on the stabbing, but I'll try. You stay safe. Stay curious, stay kind. Good news? She's learning the same lessons her son learned. Perhaps your species will find balance between violence and mercy. Maybe we'll get it right eventually. Or perhaps the trying is the point. Perhaps the effort matters more than the outcome. Sarah considered that, looking out over the Vrexian capital city visible through the arena's transparent walls. Alien architecture reaching for alien skies, beautiful and strange and ultimately comprehensible once you learn to see past the surface, like humans seen through alien eyes. Violent and compassionate.
Destructive and creative.
Capable of both atrocity and sacrifice, sometimes in the same breath. Maybe you're right, Sarah said. Maybe trying is all any species can do. Try to be better. Try to understand. Try to build bridges instead of burning them. Then I hope your species never stops trying. It's our best and worst quality. Thrakos' mandibles clicked in what Sarah now recognized as genuine amusement. Then the galaxy should prepare itself. Stubborn species reshape the universe eventually. Or die trying. No, they're really not. They stood together watching the alien sunset paint the city in colors that had no Earth names. Warriors from different species finding common ground in the aftermath of violence that had taught them both something worth knowing. And far away, on a transport ship, jumping through the spaces between stars, a 10-year-old boy looked out at the universe and thought about honor and mercy and the terrifying cost of protecting others. He would remember. They all would. The story would spread the way stories did. Would grow and change and become legend, probably, but at its heart would remain something true, that a human soldier had chosen breaking over killing, that a child had chosen mercy over revenge, that an alien queen had recognized honor even when it came wearing an unexpected face, that in the vast darkness of space, in the gap between species and cultures and understanding, sometimes violence could transform into something better. Sometimes. Not always, but sometimes was enough to matter. Sometimes was enough to build on. And building, slow and imperfect and ongoing, was what made civilization possible at all. Sarah turned from the window, ready to continue training, to continue learning, to continue the messy work of being human among aliens who were learning what humanity actually meant. Behind her, the stars wheeled in their ancient courses, indifferent to the small dramas of carbon-based life. But among that life, in the spaces between stars where understanding grew slowly and hard-won, one more story had been written into the fabric of the galaxy, one more bridge built, one more chance for something better. It would have to be enough.